Hello, everybody, and welcome on the Commerce Show. Today, I'm receiving Patrick Chan. Who is Patrick Chan? He's the general manager of Sezzle, the famous buy now, pay later solution. He's going to be explaining us how their solutions are currently disrupting the e-commerce industry, but also the way we do transaction online. I had a lot of fun with Patrick. You'll see he's a really humble guy, but he's also really funny. So we exchange a lot about various subjects, such as how the COVID have impacted the buying habits of the consumer. But we've talked also about his leadership and management background. We've talked about how buy now pay later solution can improve your e-commerce, and we're really we've been, I think, really in depth about uh, all the things that a merchant should think of prior to get on board on a solution like Sezzle or Afterpay or PayBright. We've talked about all of those, and we've discovered how Sezzle has a really nice mission, strong human values, such as their B Corp certification. So it was really amazing. I'm sure you're gonna really enjoy that podcast. So be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel. Let's give a share to us, please. So if you can share it to your LinkedIn profile, if you've enjoyed that episode, it would be great. Thank you so much, and the podcast starts right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome on the Commerce Show. Today, I'm really excited to receive Patrick Chan from Sezzle. Patrick is the general manager for Canada, and I'm very happy to have him today, to have someone with an important role like that on the show. I know he has a lot of knowledge to share with us today about e-commerce and the buy now, pay later solution that Sezzle is. So I'm gonna start right now with my question. Patrick, thank you for being on the show. How are you?
Philippe, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really great, really great. We had a
Good.
talk just prior to the recording that you're almost out of COVID on your end in Toronto, right?
Yeah, just one more day. Ontario announced that starting Friday, which is tomorrow, patios will be back open. I think retail will be at 25% capacity. So can't wait for things to open back up. Enjoy getting together with family again and sitting outside, but obviously still being cautious and doing our part in getting things back to normal.
Yes, and you'll see in Quebec we had that experience like 1 month ago, and it went pretty well. So I wish you the best for this part of this pandemic. So let's start with the questions, Patrick.
Sure.
So you started your career as an account executive at Salesforce, then you moved to PayPal as the strategic. Actually, senior strategic growth for large enterprise. After 4 years, you moved to Qualtrics, that has been acquired by SAP for over $8 billion. So that's a pretty huge transaction. And you were at that time an enterprise account executive, so you have a pretty good sales background, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Now you are the general manager at Sezzle for Canada, so you're in charge of the Canada. So over the last 10 years, you developed a lot of experiences in the SaaS industry, so software as a service.
hmm
Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you become the general manager of Sezzle in Canada?
Yeah, for sure. Most of it's a blur, to be honest, but it's been a ton of fun. But if it's okay, I'd love to start the story long before Salesforce and SaaS, because I
Go
take a lot
ahead.
of pride. Yeah, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I've been working since I was 15 years old, and you'll see that on my LinkedIn profile.
Oh
Working,
yeah.
jobs in food service and retail, selling door to door, doing cold calls for donations. So I've done a lot of things, and I'm really proud of that. And I definitely wasn't thinking this way when when I was young doing those jobs. But when I took 3 buses to the mall for my part-time job at Sport Check while I was in high school, all of those experiences really helped me, I think, build form a strong foundation and work ethic, which later in life helped me with being successful at companies like Salesforce and like PayPal, now at Sezzle. And to be quite honest, I never thought I would end up in a sales role. Growing up, especially in an immigrant family, my I think my parents always thought, and myself included, always wanted me to be like a banker or a doctor or a lawyer. They and
You're
I
almost a
was
banker, actually, with Sezzle. You're
I guess
almost a banker.
yeah, I
Yeah,
guess a
I
little
guess.
bit. I was, I was always pretty good with numbers. And so I actually went to university. I majored in finance in university and did some accounting courses. And up until about my third year in school, I thought I would be an accountant or something in finance. I thought that was my path. But as
Yep.
I was doing some of those school projects that I was working on, and this is right around the time, not to date myself, but this is right around the time when computers became more powerful and smartphones started becoming a thing. I was like, there's no way what I'm doing now isn't going to be replaced by computers or even a computer or a phone sometime soon. So, you know, I really thought about what I should be doing and thinking long term because I wanted to have a long, 30, 40-year career. But the truth is, I had no idea what I wanted to do
Oh
uh,
yeah.
after graduation when I was in school. So I just started applying to jobs when I was in my fourth year. I had a few interviews. And then I ended up talking to a company called Cintas, which was my first job out of school. My interview was over the Christmas holidays. I remember not feeling that well. I think I had a cold during that day. But at the time, I didn't have I don't think I had the maturity or the confidence or whatever to even call and say, hey, I need to cancel. I'm not feeling well. So I went anyway. And long story short, I bombed it. Like I did not do well. And
Okay.
I knew that I was done walking out. A few days later, I get that email in my inbox. Sorry, but you'll not be moving forward with this job. And at the time, I didn't even know if I wanted that job, but I just wanted a job. But I think the competitive nature kicked in me, and I was like, I need to get this thing somehow, this Cintas job. So a couple of months go by, and at Western, where I went to school, they had a job fair, and so I go there. I explain the situation to the recruiter that was at the booth, and they basically said, sorry, but since you got rejected at that one location, you're basically a no go forever. But maybe we can get you an interview at a different location. So I'm like, let's go, let's do this. The interview gets set up. This time I'm feeling good. I'm not sick or anything. I did 5 interviews the same day. And I got an offer for the management trainee position, which is what I did when I graduated. And the other amazing thing that came out of all this is that, and you just talk about luck and serendipity, is that one of the people who interviewed me at this new location ended up being now my wife. So
Wow.
I think that's a yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting story. And since then, I've continued to work really hard, dedicated time, and continue to getting better every day at my craft and everything. And luckily, had the opportunity to be employed by some amazing brands and companies like the ones you mentioned. And luckily, I just stumbled upon a lot of solutions that really help customers or like our customers achieve their goals and what they want to do. Um, so I think, yeah, that's a little bit about me and my experience, my background. But one more thing before I guess we move into the next question is that I've been extremely fortunate to have worked for these companies and these amazing companies, Sezzle included, and all of these companies really believe in doing good while doing well, and that
Yes.
business can be a force for good. So I've been fortunate to learn a lot of those things from these companies, and I've made it a personal mission to continue helping communities that we operate in, and then also, hopefully being able to influence others to do the same. I truly believe in giving back, especially for those who can.
That's really amazing that you say that, but because that's the reason why I've started also the podcast and the Journée e-commerce to give back to community and train people to help them to become better. So we have a fit there.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've listened to a couple. They're great.
Oh,
My yeah,
thank you so much.
my buddy Richard was on a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, Richard, what an awesome guy. I met Richard a few years ago, and now he's one of my reference. I love him.
Good, good.
So let's talk a little bit more about Sezzle, and we're gonna get in depth about the solution, but also all the disruption we know that is happening right now in the e-commerce industry. So Sezzle is disrupting a little bit the e-commerce industry by providing merchant and client solutions to help them do transactions. Uh,
hmm
can you tell our audience what is Sezzle and what do you provide exactly in terms of service and product?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a company, Sezzle was founded in 2016, actually doing something completely different. We're based in Minneapolis, publicly traded on the Australian Stock Exchange. We expanded into Canada, our service into Canada, not that long ago, about a year and a half ago, around mid 2019, and I joined in October of 2019. Um, our payment solution is currently offered to customers in Canada, in the US. We recently launched pilots in India, parts of Europe, and we're also starting to build a presence and have some people on the ground in Brazil. We're accepted as a payment method at over 34,000 partners and retail partners in North America, including some familiar Canadian brands like an Altitude Sports, Softmock,
Yes.
Bonlook, Laura, soon to be Stokes, and many more. So very different industries that we can work in. Now, the underlying premise of our business and our solution is that if you look at the younger generation and how they shop, how they pay for things, and how they really just think about financial services, it's very different from previous generations. The current credit system is somewhat outdated, and in particular, credit cards. And I'll speak on just Canada for now, but in Canada, we're highly driven by rewards. There's a lot of credit cards that have amazing rewards, and credit cards are widely used in Canada. In fact, 89% of Canadians reported to have at least one credit card in their wallet. We have
Oh.
about 75 million of them in circulation. But the group, when you really step back and you think about it, the group that is funding those awesome rewards for those cards are likely not the ones that are truly benefiting. Because if you look at the stats, average credit card debt in Canada is just under $3,000. 48% of Canadians actually reported they don't pay back their balance in full every month. And unfortunately, we know that usually comes with often, confusing interest fees and some other fees that might have to pay.
Mhm.
So what we're finding is that, especially the younger generation, they're looking for a more responsible, a more transparent way to budget and to pay for things, and also a way to build credit while doing so. So that's the Canadian lens. If I think about the U.S., a lot of people between that 18 to 34 bracket, they don't even have a credit card
Oh.
because they grew up during the downturn. There were specific rules that made it harder to get credit cards. It's hard to build enough credit to be able to get a credit card. So we're addressing those macro trends, which are really just people are using credit cards less than they used to, or previous generations. Now, on the solution itself, so what is the actual solution to help solve this? It's really simple. Our solution is really simple. So think of us like a credit card, but on training wheels. We are like a you know we are like a practice for a credit card. We are an in-cart payment option currently in Canada, only available online. It
Okay.
helps people unlock some of their budgeting or purchasing power. We partner with retailers, so the ones I mentioned, like Altitude Sports. So we partner with them to enable their customers and their shoppers to split up purchases into four interest-free payments over 6 weeks. It's always zero interest, and there's never a credit check. And to keep it responsible, we usually start shoppers with a relatively low limit. So our average order value in Canada is actually around $140. The retailer
Okay.
gets paid in full the next business day, and they ship the item just like they would any other order with a credit card or PayPal and whatnot. So
Okay.
if you're listening and you're familiar with like a layaway plan, it is almost exactly that, a digital version of that, except the order is shipped right away by the retailer before it is paid in full.
Mm.
And then, of course, for the retailers, this type of payment option is helping unlock a whole new set of customers. It's also a great tool to increase things like conversion, average order volume or value, sorry. And we also do a great job at marketing our amazing partners through channels like in Instagram, for example, where we have close to 100,000 followers. So we can get brands in front of our consumers that maybe they had otherwise not heard of before.
Yeah, and it was the case for one of the clients we worked together to implement Sezzle. Like I think last week, our client Lambert Design, they sell handbags,
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
they were in your newsletter, and
Oh, that's great.
all the staff received it, and they were like, Sezzle are talking about Lambert, yeah, and I was like, yeah. All you and the
That's cool.
team, you've created that. We worked to do that, and everyone was really excited, and Lambert really appreciated, and we saw traffic on the website and sales. So
That's great.
that's awesome that you're able to give back that way also. So you're not only a payment solution, you're also a display for all those retailer, and that's what I've discovered also. Because another brand also that we've implemented on Sezzle are on your like marketplace or directory. So
Yep.
that's awesome that you have that. That's
Yeah,
really
one
exciting.
one thing I want to mention the directory since you bring it up is
Yep.
when COVID started, we a couple of months after that we kept getting calls from our customers, our like Sezzle members, and they kept asking online and calls. They were like, "How do we support more Canadian businesses?" We we
Mm-hmm.
work with we work with a ton of small medium businesses in Canada as well as the bigger ones like the Altitude Sports. So when a few months after COVID started, we decided to create a Shop Canada directory. So if you go to our website at Sezzle.com, there's actually a section, Shop Canada, where we feature hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Canadian brands and Canadian retailers, Canadian owned companies or Canadian owned companies, so that our customers can go and discover and explore other just Canadian brands that they could be supporting. So so that's something we're really proud of.
That's yeah, that's awesome, and I think local shopping has became something really important since the beginning of the pandemic, and I
That's right.
know that it's gonna stay. I think more people are conscious that it does have an impact, an environmental impact, but also an economical impact, and we saw with
Huge.
lots of the restaurants, retail stores that have been shut down during the pandemic. So that's something amazing that you're doing. Just before I continue my other questions about the buy now pay later, I just want to get back a little bit in time and about also what you're currently doing because you went from a sales role to a leadership slash management role for a publicly traded company. So, what has been your biggest challenge in terms of leadership and management so far? Maybe it's a
Hmm.
wide question, but I'm sure you're gonna have a pretty nice answer.
Yeah, that is a pretty broad question. I'd be lying if I said that there weren't lots of challenges, but I love challenges. So that's a great question. I will, one I'll talk about. I think one of the biggest challenges I'm facing now, and I faced and I still do, is really just around time management. I love speaking with customers and potential customers, given the sales background, and I've spent 10 plus 15 years of my career prior to joining Sezzle, actively in those roles, trying to find new customers by doing email outreach, calling, door to door knocking when we could do so. So it's hard to all of a sudden, just take a step back and not do that as much, especially because I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I really enjoyed the conversations of how our solutions could help those customers. Um, but it's interesting because at the same time, if I was to give advice to somebody that's starting in a similar role at a similar size organization with a similar growth trajectory or growth goals as Sezzle, I would probably say that that person, even if they were in management or a general manager or whatever, that they should probably spend at least 30% of their time selling, because that's the only way you keep going. You got to keep selling. So, um, you know, I think the related challenge to that is that I don't want my team, because I have a sales team. I don't want my team to think I'm doing it because I don't believe they're capable of doing so. We have an amazing team, and I don't think that at all.
Oh yes,
Um,
you
so
have.
so there's that aspect of it.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges is the ability to balance, you know, the management of sales, marketing, recruiting, product, and then with managing and giving direction to the team, and really just finding the right mix around doing that is something I continue to work on.
Yeah, that's a good point of view because sometimes people have only specific tasks, but not a variety of tasks and department that you have to manage and oversee. And I think that my key takeaway on what you said is spending time to stay on the market and go doing some sales pitch because you're gonna stay in contact and what is important for your customer. And I think you need to stay in touch with that. That's whatever the market you're in. I think it's something that is always true. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. And we talked a little bit about COVID earlier, but I would like to know your point of view and how did COVID affected the online purchase habits of the consumer. And do you think they spend more, they spend less, they spend differently with new emerging payment method? Have you observed some patterns, or do you have any data about that at Sezzle?
Mhm. Yeah, we do, and these, this is data that we talk to retailers and partners about all the time. So I think there are three macro trends that I can talk about related to your question, and the answer is all of the above, by the way. So the first one is definitely no surprise, which is the rise in digital commerce, and of course because of COVID, this has been accelerated years. I'm sure you see in your business. You were just telling me about all the new customers that you're working with now. It's because they're seeing this acceleration of digital and digital commerce. So the stat that I saw recently was that during the holidays in 2020, over 25% or every $1 in $4 was spent online. And I think it's safe to say that people are shopping online now more than ever. And for both delivery and curbside pickup, which some retailers are doing fantastically, that, in my opinion, is likely not going to stop even after things get back to normal and open back up. Once you've experienced the convenience of online shopping and curbside pickup, for certain things, it's really hard to go back now, having to like walk down aisles and find what you're looking
Of
for,
course.
especially at like large retailers. So but that's not to say your brick and mortar is going to die. I don't think that. I think retailers with a brick and mortar presence really need to continue to focus on experience and using in-person opportunities to build brand loyalty, and really cater to the senses that are really hard now and maybe never be able to achieve, that they can achieve over a screen. I still think there are a lot of opportunities for in-store. I just think it's going to look very different. Um, the second trend is, I saw in a recent Boston Consulting article, is pointing to the rapid shifts in consumer behavior and really what consumers value, what we value as a consumer. So you just
Hmm.
talked about it. There's a higher emphasis now on fewer, better, shopping local, overall sustainability, which we know costs a little bit more. And
Of course.
and consumers and companies, they want to align with, or hopefully they want to align with companies that actually represent good and do things sustaintably. Which actually, by the way, shameless plug, but Sezzle recently got certified as a B Corp, which
Yeah,
which
I
really
saw
speaks to
that.
our sustainability goals and all that. But yeah, and along with that is
Congrats
also,
for this, by the way. That's something important, and we're,
thank
by
you.
the way, because of that, and because we have lots of clients that are B Corp certified. We put in place also a durable development department in house, and we're on the roadmap to get a B Corp certification also for Novatize.
Oh,
So,
that's
following
amazing.
your path.
That's amazing. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they do a great job at making sure that they keep the standards high, and we're very proud of getting that stamp of approval. It took us a long time, and the team worked really hard on it. Um, anyway, thank you for that, and that's exciting to hear for Novatize. But back to the kind of what consumers value. It's around things like transparency, which in our world in payments really means that having solutions and terms that are easy to understand, things like no hidden fees, and then also control and the ability to manage and predict expenses, which we're seeing now more and more with subscription services ranging from gym equipment to even the content we assume, not assume, that we consume. with like Netflix or Spotify, and then even our meals. There's a lot of meal plans now, so predictable, better, easier to manage. I think is another pretty big trend. And then lastly,
Yes.
you asked about payment methods.
Yep.
Of course, we're seeing a huge growth in buy now pay later. Um, but I do want to say that buy now pay later can mean a lot of things. A lot of companies are saying we're buy now pay later, and using that term because it's pretty hot these days. But when I say buy now pay later, I'm specifically referring to the model of four payments over 6 weeks, which really serves as a credit card alternative and a budgeting tool. We don't do like 24 months or whatever like that with interest. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not our business. And When you look at stats from say Salesforce, they said that buy now pay later usage gained 109% year over year during the holiday season of 2020.
Wow.
A recent survey I saw, I think this came out of the US, is that over 40% of millennials claim that they've made purchases using a buy now pay later payment method uh, in the last year.
Hmm.
And at Sezzle, I can speak on our own results that are publicly shared. We recently reported our annual results a couple of months ago, and our underlying merchant sales, which is really just the payments that we process for our retailer partners, that's up over 250% year over year. And then
Wow.
and then in Canada, in particular, and keep in mind 2020 was our first full year. When
Hmm.
comparing 2019 to 2020, we're up over 1,500% year over year as far as processing volume.
Yeah, it's considered still for a merchant as an emerging solution. Like people are starting to get used to search for an option in the checkout process. So I think now it starts to be in mind of consumer, and when they land on a website and they're searching for a product, most of the time the product are a little bit higher of than 20 or 40 bucks per product, so they're expecting to have a payment solution to help them to to pay the to pay the bill actually. So
Yeah,
that's amazing to see that you had a huge growth like that in Canada.
thank you, and we do that with great partners like you. What I will say is we're having very different conversations now with retailers than we did you know, in 2019 or even 2020. The conversation has really shifted because back in 2019, early 2020, it was mostly like, why would somebody want to split up a pair of shoes over four payments? And now I think retailers are starting to realize, wait a minute, it's just a payment option. It's like a credit card, but it's easier to understand, and a lot of consumers prefer it as just a payment option.
Yeah, and it helps to reduce the pressure on the cash flow of the
That's it.
consumer.
Yeah,
So that does
absolutely.
make sense. Yeah, that's amazing. And on the other side, the e-commerce owners should ask themselves, I guess, some questions before entering into the process of implementing a solution like Sezzle. So what should be considered by e-commerce owners prior to choose their buy now pay later solution for their store?
I think the first thing is, and again, if we're talking buy now pay later specifically, the four payments over 6 weeks, I think the first thing is, our a good fit for at least for Sezzle is really anyone who sells something online, as long as their average order value is, let's say under $750. Um,
So
when
that's the breaking point, 750.
That's the average. We can actually go up
Oh,
to 2,500. But on
okay.
average, if they're under 750, probably a good fit. Like I said, our average order value in Canada is about $140. So
Okay.
really all price ranges up until the 2,500 could work with Sezzle. So I would first consider that whether or not that they fit in that bucket. Secondly, I would think about as a retailer, um, who is their customer, like who is their aspirational customer. If one of their top priorities is being able to reach out and message to a younger base of 18 to 34-year olds, and really being able to connect with them in a different way, using very different using different methods, well, guess what, I mean, this type of payment method is increasingly being preferred by that group. So I would
Hmm.
think about that as well. And then thirdly, I would the, we don't pretend that we are building, rockets and going to space or anything. So there are different players in this space that do seemingly the same thing. There are slight differences from a functionality standpoint between the different players, but just like Visa and Mastercard, there are a few different players. So I think those retailers need to sit down and think about what's important to me, what's important to my customers. Do we want to work with companies that are doing good for the world, or have great customer experience, or do I just want to go for the absolute lowest price? So I think they have to really decide what's important for them as well. But I think as far as like industries and price points, we work with everyone. I think what the retailer needs to understand is that you know not everyone's going to use something like Sezzle or Sezzle. Our customer isn't somebody that has a credit card who loves their points and pays off their balance in full every month. That's not a Sezzle customer, and that person will continue to use credit cards, you
Of course.
probably on that site. But there is a huge base of customers that are choosing and not wanting to use, either don't have or don't want to use a credit card for various reasons, and they can really connect with those with that group through a service like Sezzle.
That's really interesting. So I get that you're giving access to credit to a percentage of the population that normally would not necessarily have access to credit cards, or that, as you said earlier, would be a first step before getting a credit card or helping them to purchase online. So that's really interesting. And on the merchant side, what the merchant can expect in terms of results after implementing the solution, because it's not only interesting for the customer, it's interesting for the merchants. I know that it has an impact on the average order value, but do you have
Mhm.
any cues on what to expect and how much time does it take to get some good results? And so for someone that only have Visa, Mastercard right now on their
Mhm.
checkout, what they can expect from that?
Yeah, so I mean, it does differ depending on industry and average order value, as what you've probably seen with your customers. But in
Hmm.
general, from what we've seen, after having Sezzle for about 3 to 6 months, a retailer can expect that in Canada, around say 10% of their total volume coming through Sezzle, through
Hmm.
various studies that we've done, and we have a case study with SoftMock, for example. Uh, they should expect about 70 to 80% of that 10% to be incremental. So the incremental is coming from average order value increases, like you just said. They come from our ability to bring them new customers that they didn't have in the past, and then of course the ability to impact conversion by offering a solution to help break purchases into four payments, as well as a preferred payment method. So through all of that, if I'm the retailer and thinking, why should I have Sezzle? They should expect somewhere between like 5 to 12% incremental sales from
Hmm.
using sales, from not from using Sezzle. Usually after six months of having us. And the case study I referred to was SoftMock. After having us for I think it was about 9 months was the time that we did the case study. Between the number of customers that Sezzle referred to them, they also saw a 50% average order value lift in customers that use Sezzle versus other payment methods. The average order was about 50% more. And
Hmm.
so they did all of their analysis, and their CFO came back to us and said, yeah, we think Sezzle delivered about a 10% incremental sales to our online business, which is incredible. I mean,
That's
um,
insane. It
yeah.
has a
So
huge impact for retailers to choose a solution like that. That's it.
it
That's
is.
insane.
It is. And if retailers are listening, as especially on platforms like a Shopify, it takes about 10 minutes to get Sezzle up and running on that platform, as well as a few others.
Yep.
So I would say, if I was a business owner, I would say, why wouldn't you just test? let the data speak for itself. I
Oh
can't
yes.
say, yeah, I can't say it works 100% of the time, but it does work, a majority of the time. And if there's an easy way to test, I would encourage everyone to do so.
Yes, that's a good idea to test it because it's really the barriers, to join in are really low. It does take effectually like 15 minutes to have all the things set it up. I think it's longer to sign the contract and and start the relation with the rep than setting up the thing. So that
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
sense to
most of
test
our,
it.
I think 95% of our merchant or our retailer partners actually just sign up on their own. They get it set up on their own, and we never talk to them. A lot of it is done on their own. But actually, one more thing that I do want to bring up, which is really interesting, is the aspect because of the flexibility in payment. That what we've seen is that customers tend to buy a little bit more with that, like we talked about average orders. So, for example,
Yep.
we're on websites like Popeye Supplements and Shop
Yep.
Santé in Quebec, pretty well known sites for vitamins and supplements and health foods. And you would think these are regular purchases that people make every couple of weeks or once a month. So what's the benefit in Sezzle? But what we found was working with these types of retailers was that these customers, because they could use Sezzle, they would stock up more on products and order less frequently. So the person that was buying
Oh, that's
a 2 week
important. Yeah.
yeah, so the person that was buying a 2 week supply prior to Sezzle is now buying a 2 month supply or a 3 month supply because they can split the payments over time. And then for the retailer, they're now shipping less, but they're shipping more
Exactly.
units per
More.
shipment,
Yeah.
which has been amazing to keep shipping costs down. So those are things that I would encourage retailers to think about outside of just being able to offer like a split payment option.
That's a really good point because it has also a cost impact for the merchant outside of just the payment solution. It does have an impact on their cost for their shipping cost because if they ship
Yes.
$1 versus $3, because the client was buying each 2 weeks, or it does, yeah, it changed the game. Yeah, that's a really
Yeah,
interesting.
it's it's an
Uh,
interesting one that doesn't come up often, but there are a few indirect impacts that we've seen purely just based on working with various retailers. One other one I'll mention actually while we're on this topic is returns. We're finding that especially with fashion retailers that um, Sezzle customers are returning their items a lot less frequently than other payment methods. And we believe that that has to do with just the psychological impact of seeing, uh, let's, for example, like a $200 item on somebody's bank statement or credit card bill, but now they're seeing, four payments of $50 instead of the 200. And we found that the return rates to be much less for Sezzle purchases versus other payment methods.
Oh wow, that was something that I wasn't thinking about, but yeah, that's right. It does. Yeah, yeah. You're less likely to return a product if you know. Yeah, I get it. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's all positive and all beautiful and unicorns, but what type of merchant would you recommend to stay away from a solution like Sezzle or other solution? Not necessarily Sezzle, but what type of merchant that hasn't been a really good fit so far with the solution. Are there any, or something about that?
I mean, we generally, of course, like we work with retailers in all verticals of all sizes, and as long as they're selling something that's legal, of course, um, we don't.
We're not in the dark web right now, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
not yeah, exactly. I really don't think that there's anything that's not a great fit. With our buy now pay later solution, it's what I think is if the retailer accepts credit cards today, then Sezzle is most likely a really good fit for them. Um, or if they
Okay.
have PayPal today, Sezzle's probably a really good fit for them. Where I guess I personally, where I personally think that some merchants maybe shouldn't offer buy now pay later is in the environment where it may be very costly for the customer. Um, you know,
Okay.
like I think there are some services that um, I think there are some services that end up costing the customer a lot more, whereas our mission is to help educate consumers on how to spend more responsibly and having a tool that helps them build their credit. I just personally don't believe that if somebody needs to pay for $1,000 product over 24 months and pay a high interest fee, I'm just personally not aligned with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it, and it does make sense also and aligned with the with your social responsible vision. So that does make sense. But let's take an example for a business case that we had recently. So
Okay.
we have one of our merchant that sells 20 up to $40 products. So the average order value are quite low. Let's say $45, $50 maximum. Uh, would you recommend using the solution, or what would be the strategy to leverage that type of payment method?
Yeah, so I would go back to what it's hard to say because if I don't know what their product is, but it goes back to I guess the frequency and also whether or not that retailer or that merchant is thinks that they could be selling more, what their shipping hurdle is. I think there's a whole lot of things that go into the equation. But what I can say is I can give a couple of examples. One is the one I just talked about, like for example, vitamins or a lot of CPG goods. Each product is five, 10, $15 at most. But when people are buying multiple and they're getting to that free shipping hurdle of say 50 or 60 or $75, then that becomes a pretty good use case for Sezzle. We also have a lot of retailers that even sell like $5 items, like in a lot of crafts. We have a lot of merchants that sell fabric, that might sell like pens and different types of material to do arts and crafts. But what ends up happening is people are adding a lot to the basket so that they can do their project, and then that becomes a good use case for Sezzle. But like I said, back to what I had referenced before. Um, I think they should just test and see if it's something that their customers have a demand for. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but there's no better way than to use to use data from testing.
Yeah, and a quick tip we did implement is that we can put a minimum order value to set before using Sezzle. So in that particular case, we did put a limit of $50. So
Okay.
all the consumer that you know under $50, it's so cheap that it does make little less sense to finance an order. But if you said that you saw good results in vitamin, it does make sense. But yeah, we tested it and it went well, and we saw that all the average order value for this particular case went from 45 to $80. So
Wow.
we saw that average order value lift. So it was incredible. Let's finish with the question about the Sezzle. So my last one, prior we enter in the final questions, because I know you have a hard stop. So we know that, as you said, there's a lot of emerging solution. We see Afterpay on the market, PayBright, Klarna, mostly in the US. And even I know that PayPal are entering into the market. So
Yep.
what does make Sezzle so unique? And yeah, what why should a consumer choose Sezzle instead of others? So just in few words.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing, and I think most companies would say this, but I think the first thing is really the people and the mission. So because of our team, and we have an amazing team, we provide an amazing experience for both shoppers and our retailer partners. And you can read about that. Don't take my word for it. You can read about that on our public reviews and on our app reviews, and feel free to just do that on your own. And then the second piece of it is really around mission. So there are a lot of companies in the space that you mentioned can do very similar things from a functionality standpoint.
Hmm.
But the why behind it is, I think, differs from company to company. So it really depends on what type of customer that retailer is wanting to connect with as well. When we talk to our customers, they talk about Sezzle being a great way to experience credit, to manage spending habits, and one of the biggest features we rolled out in the currently in the U.S. for now, is called Sezzle Up, which is the ability for us to actually help our shoppers improve their credit score. So for customers who opt into Sezzle Up, what we're doing is, as they're showing positive repayment behavior once they sign up for Sezzle, we are helping them improve their credit. And we
Oh,
are and our exactly, and that's a it's a huge problem, with people not being able to access more traditional credit, or them being able to go out and get a mortgage, or a car loan and things like that. So we're helping these groups by improving their credit. We know that's really important to them, and then for them to actually be able to graduate, or for us to be able to help them get into more traditional forms of credit, and be able to use things like credit card in a responsible way, and to use it what I call properly. So I don't think any other buy now pay later is doing that right now, to actually help people improve their credit. So that's a big part of our business, as well as our mission. Um, and then thirdly, I'll say we were the Sezzle was the first one, and still one of the only ones, to be able to offer a buy now pay later service to both U.S. and Canada under the same brand. That's really important because
mm,
the cross border aspect of U.S. and Canada, we're the biggest corridor in the world, as far as cross border trade. So to be able to do that under the same brand, and if the retailer has the same URL, I think is a huge advantage. And
of course.
yeah, so I think those are the major things that I would say. And then back to what we talked about earlier, is, one of the proof points in our mission, and our mission is to financially empower the next generation. And one of the proof points is that B Corp certification.
Mm,
It's,
of course.
we uh, we 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 want to make sure that we're continuously doing good, and doing good for the communities around us. Uh, and we think or we know that's a huge differentiator, between us and some of the competition. But the last thing I will say is actually this is, um, you know what we're experiencing a lot, and you'll see this in Australia, which is a much more mature market for buy now pay later, is that retailers are starting to understand and realize, wow, like, Sezzle has their own customers, Afterpay has their own customers. Maybe we should offer a couple of options, just like we do Visa, Mastercard, Amex, and
Aha.
you're starting to see that more often, as well.
Okay, so we can expect soon to see Afterpay in the same checkout process as Sezzle, because Sezzle customers are used to use Sezzle and they are comfortable, and vice versa. So yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And I have a small question that came from another guest that I had that for an episode that will be released soon. They were asking myself, are there any solution? And I'm asking a question directly to you, and it wasn't
Sure.
written in the question, so feel free to answer or not. Are you expecting to release a feature that will allow in store? So when people are in store to use Sezzle, are you expecting something like that to happen, to offer like a omni-channel solution for
um,
consumer?
yeah, so I'll answer the question with what I can share. In the U.S., we already do this today. So if you go to a GameStop brick and mortar store, if you go to a Target
We know
brick and
well
mortar store,
GameStop.
um, so
We know well.
yeah,
To the
yeah.
moon. To the moon.
um, but we're available already, in stores at those brands in the U.S. So, as a company, we always try to offer solutions to our retailers that are consistent. So yeah, that would be my best way to answer that. We're certainly looking into it, but we can already do it in the U.S.
Okay, because I would have a huge client for you. If once it's available in Canada, let me know. I'll introduce you for sure.
Absolutely.
Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I will end up just asking you on how do you stay up to date on the e-commerce, and yeah, I would like to know what do you do to stay up to date about the e-commerce right now.
Yeah, I'm following. I'm following. I follow lots of groups. I mean, I consume a lot of content on LinkedIn, on Twitter, etc. So I'm following groups like the one that you have. I talk to partners like you. I follow Retail Insider, and keeping up with the conferences and the trade shows and making sure just keeping up to date. And then at the end of the day, it's just talking to a lot of retailers and if it's about Sezzle, if it's not about Sezzle, if it's not about payments, I think I'm just generally a curious person. So if they're open to having that conversation, I'm always happy to learn, and that's helped me in keeping up to date with what's going on.
All right, that's amazing, Patrick. Thank you so much. It's all the time we had for today, but it was really a big pleasure to receive you on the show. And maybe in a few months we will have a second episode together. But it was a pleasure for me to have you
Maybe,
on the
maybe the
conversation.
next one we do over coffee or something like that in person.
Oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah. We're gonna have a studio in the next office, so of course we're gonna do it. In person for sure. Thank you so
Great.
much, Patrick.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.